So executing a vision. You have made master plans, you have drafted websites and PDFs of your vision, you've shared it on sessions, you've gotten your media team members, you've gotten your organizers, you are good to go with going into the session and making the session happen, or making your vision happen as the media team, or you are the NC and you're also executing your vision through a session, or you have a vision for a session, that is. So in doing these things, I'm just going to kind of break down the components of a vision and how we bridge the gap between having all these wonderful ideas and actually putting them into practice. I've put the components of a vision in kind of three main ways. So a master plan, which is what one of the previous modules talked about, a vision, which is what the other module talked about, and the people. We don't need to talk about people in a module because, well, we are the people and we know the people. But I will talk a little about how these interact. If you think about the very standard, what, why, how, when kind of template, this trio is a bit like that. So a master plan is how you're going to make it happen. Oh, what's going on? Yes. A vision is what's going to happen. And the people are the ones who are going to make it happen, with your resources in the bottom being your little help to make it happen. So, yeah, you can't read my writing probably, but hey. So a master plan can be either the session plan by the organizers. It can also be the media team plan. If you're leading a media team, you will hopefully also have a master plan of your own. And then your vision is going to, it'll include many components, and Walter talked about these extensively, but one of the components it's going to have is your output, and that's going to be kind of one of the things you focus on while executing your vision, because, well, you need the output. It could be innovation, potentially, if that's what you're into. But your vision, you're also going to definitely have a vision about the team, about the people, and about the experience. So Walter did briefly mention one of the EYP's oldest trios, which we call the PPP. Well, that was not a good way of putting it, but the people, the product, if I can write, and the process. We won't talk about this too much, but essentially, depending on how much weight you're putting on the different P's here, you're going to have that integrated in your vision, where you may say, okay, yeah, we're going to work a lot on personal development, and that's part of your vision. And of course, that needs to work together with the master plan so that your personal development has time dedicated to it. Maybe you're doing individual meetings with your media team members for their personal development. That will be built into your master plan. Similarly, the master plan, where let's say you have opening ceremony, needs to be connected to your vision, where you know that one of the outputs you do is the session video, which means it needs to be planned in the master plan when you're going to start shooting and editing that video. So that's how these two work together. The people, I don't need to tell you how the people work together because, well, without the people, neither of these really happen. But there are different aspects that the people at a session bring forward to executing your vision. The people, you are not the only one bringing together the session, right? You're not the only one who's executing everything. So that means that you need to know how the different people, and as we've been using the term stakeholders, work together to execute the whole vision. 1 second. So when it comes to people, I'm just trying to check if there were any micro little things here, but I don't think so. Okay. You have your, so in the context of a media team, you have your editorial assistants and your media team members, right? Now, these people, you see the wonderful EAs and MTMs, so beautifully drawn. These people are the ones kind of helping you execute your vision primarily when you're editing. So your editorial assistants, there are many ways this can work, of course, depending on your vision, how you want to structure your team. These can change, but the essence of what people do is unlikely to change. So your editorial assistants may have specialties. So you may have an editorial assistant that does video, that does photo, that does design. This used to be structure before that some people used. And if this is the case, then you know that you can get help from your editorial assistants to execute certain parts of your vision, right? So if you have a video editorial assistant, you know that that EA it can go and help you with the, say, session video, which itself is, well, when we come back out, which itself is one of the, if I can draw that arrow, one of the outputs that you have for the session. That was silly. Go. Sorry. Similarly, you may also be, for example, you're more interested in flat hierarchy, or you are interested in having a editorial team that leads the team together. Then they may also help you with leadership, right? So they may also help you with the personal development and the team management. And of course, EAs are always there for support. So in any part of executing your vision, your EAs are hopefully there for you to support you and to give you any kind of support you may need. Similarly, your media team members, well, primarily they're the ones experiencing it. So if you have a vision for personal development, then your media team members are the ones living that vision, who need to get that personal development that you enact on them. But also, they're the ones who are shooting content. They are creating videos and projects, which makes up the majority of your output of your events, right? So you want to make sure that your media team members are able to connect with parts of your vision, whether you wanted to have this kind of output and they connect with it. Of course, you're not going to force them to do anything, but that's the magic of kind of bridging those gaps between what you envision for this team to do, what this team envisions to do, and what they actually end up creating. But also, if anyone remembers or attended Melina's sponsored module 2 modules ago, then also you know that you can also have media team members shoot sponsored content. So this has been the case before. Armin isn't here now, I think, but for example, Armin was a media team member in my team, and he had some spare time, so he helped us shoot photos for sponsored content. So your media team members can help you, and you can delegate your work at times. Then to come back out, there's always the NC. Either you are the NC, or you are the editor, or you are the organizing team. In any way, in any case, you're collaborating with the NC. So if you're working with the NC, you just need to make sure that you know what the NC's expectations are, you know what their vision is, and you need to meet those needs. So usually an NC isn't going to have some drastic, crazy vision for the whole session, but they may have certain needs. They may say that in our events in this country, we do this and this way. We do not take photos like this, or we do not do this. That may be different than the rest of the EYP norm. So it's good to keep those needs in mind when you're executing your vision, and to make sure that you avoid any unnecessary conflict. With the head organizers and organizers, they're a really big part of your vision. Of course, there's the big trio of a president, editor, and HOs that in work collaboration make up what the session is and what the vision for the session is. So of course, you want to discuss and somewhat negotiate your vision with the president and the head organizers before the event starts. Also, if you're the organizer of the event that's doing communication, then you're certainly here, and you're communicating with the editor and the president to make sure that there's a harmony of vision, right? So there may be things that the president wants for the chair's team, but then also wants for the session. So if it's for the session, that needs to be discussed together to make sure that there's nothing clashing, but that everything is planned. So then when you go back out, when you go back out, you make sure that any visions that they may have are integrated into the master plan itself, right? So that's where this trio keeps working together. To come back in, you also then make sure that you're cooperating with organizers on things like sponsors and partners and NC coverage. A really big part of the module that Melina gave and the examples we showed, the reason we showed those examples was that I think in our work in Valencia, it was one of the things that really worked well, which was that we got to communicate well with the organizers before the event happened. And we learned the needs of our sponsors and our partners. We had very, very detailed briefing documents that told us what part of the sponsored content the media team needs to cover and what part the organizers need to cover. Because when you say sponsored content, it's not immediately, oh, the media team does that, or, oh, the organizers do that. Similar to, let's say, who formats the resolutions. It's a good old joke in EYP that sometimes everyone expects the media team to do that, even though it's usually technically should be on the organizers. So clarifying these needs and clarifying how the media team can assist the organizing team, or the other way around, in covering sponsored content is a really important one. But also NC coverage, the NC may have some specific needs. They may say, oh, we have these long-term partners we need to get coverage for, or they may say, we require this and this kind of photos from you. Then you would also ideally communicate that with them and get it. To then talk more about sponsors, we did just have a module, so I won't stay on this too much. But again, you want to make sure that you're meeting their needs and that you're getting their deliverables. Their deliverables are the concrete things that they send you in a brief and say, we need this kind of photo and this kind of video and this kind of product from you by the end of this event, so that our partnership agreement is fulfilled. And lastly, we have our participants. So obviously what makes up our events and why we really do our events is for our participants, for our delegates, for the other teams, pretty much anyone outside of the leadership that is part of our sessions. And for them, it's often I think, misconception to think of delegates as the consumers of the content we create. They are the consumers of the content we create, but they're not the sole consumers. And they're also not only consumers, but they're also part of the content we create. So if we try to take a look at the delegates and the participants as more than just those who are going to look at our product, and we intend to make them part of our product, then it's good to start acting like it early on. So, a lot of media team projects can be revolving around interviewing delegates and asking delegates questions or getting their opinions on something. And often when we do that, I think sometimes there's this approach to it like, hey, sit in front of this camera and talk to me. But if we treat them as co-creators of our content, and we give them a little more initiative, a little more input into the content, we explain to them what we're doing and why we're doing it, that can drastically help us execute our vision. This is something I talk about while training media team members sometimes, that when you're working together with delegates, it's really important to treat them not as subjects, but as colleagues, right? They are going to be in your video, in your article, whatever it is, and you want to treat them as part of this process. You may ask them how they will do this, or you may get their input in different ways, but involving them will certainly make the ultimate content you're creating so much better, because they'll be more comfortable, they'll be more engaged, and it will overall just help you really make your end vision much better, I think. So that's the three kind of main aspects to it. But then also, of course, we have our resources. So oftentimes there are resources that we can utilize when executing our vision. This obviously changes from event to event and has kind of different extents to which we have resources. But for example, before a session, if you're editing, and especially if it's a big session, you can try to think about what the event budget is. Something very concrete, I'll tell you now, that you should do if you're editing a session, usually with like international fora or international sessions, sometimes with national sessions. You should ask the organizers, the head organizer or the organizers, if there's a media team budget. If not, you can ask them if there can be a media team budget. Oftentimes there may not be, because we don't always work with big budgets. But if we do, then it's always nice to have a, say, 500 euro or €1,000 budget for the media team. And you're not going to go using this like, oh, we go to lunch, but rather you can use this for the products you make. You can use this for your projects. You can kind of plan big media events that you can utilize this budget for. So if you think about what the budget is, if there is any budget, that can help you support your other goals in your vision. An example I can give you is, again, in Valencia, we wanted to make a printed issue, what Walter would call a magazine. And to do this, I asked the head organizers early on, is there any budget to cover doing something like this? And they told me, yeah, we can set aside X amount of money for this. Do you need any, like, what else will you spend this budget on? And I said, well, it would be nice to have this and this, or perhaps we could use this venue and invest it like this. And it was a negotiation, but planning this early on really helped enhance a lot of our products. Of course, you may have contacts and a network. So for example, if you're editing and you want to have an external trainer, or you want to, I don't know, you want, for example, something we did in Luxembourg IF in 2018 was that I had some connections with Vice, and we actually pitched one of our projects to Vice News, and they actually wrote an article, or rather we wrote an article and they published it for us. We had a similar collaboration with Politico, and so on. So you can kind of think outside the box how you can utilize your contacts and your network in the work you're doing. More importantly, this is relevant if you're organizing an event and you're the PR communication person. You can think about how you can utilize your network to better communicate your event, right? So if you know some journalists, you can reach out to them. If you know some media outlets that may want to like come during the session and film stuff, that will all be useful. Of course, your sponsors and partners, not only utilizing the sponsors and partners you have, but you can also, again, think outside the box and try to get sponsors. So if you're doing a big event, you can always reach out to companies and be like, hey, we are a bunch of young people who are going to do this project from this many countries. Will you give us products? For example, it's something I planned to do but never got to do, is I wanted to reach out to a action camera company. So something like GoPro, basically, for an event, to say, hey, will you give us a bunch of cameras to use, because we're young people who are going to produce content. And I know for a fact that they are, if you think about the previous modules to stakeholder analysis, I know for a fact that they are interested in our demographic. So they are likely to be interested in giving us, like, just lending us some cameras that will give back to shoot some content. This is a prevalent example in EYP Germany, for example. EYP Germany is a long-term partnership with Canon. So if you go to a German session, you'll oftentimes get some Canon cameras to use for that event. And that's exactly the kind of resources that can help you enhance your content. And of course, lastly, it's important to think about location and events, especially if you're editing a session. As an editor, you should always think about events and venues ahead of time. You should ask the organizers, go to Google Maps and find photos to know where your shoot, where an event is taking place, and then you can plan your content around that. So for example, if you're going to the beach for team building, then you want to scout the area before, know where you're going to take the session photo, so that when you're there, you can just, you know exactly where the photo is going to be taken, what the angle is going to be, so that 200 people aren't waiting for you to shoot that photo. Similarly, if you're going to a cultural venue, a big, let's say, place for Euro concert, you're going to like a concert hall, then you want to go there ahead of time, check out the lighting, see if, you know, where you would set up your cameras, how many people you need, and so on. So this is more practical media team project stuff, but in the grander scale of your vision and enacting, you know, all this cool content you planned, then it's going to be useful. Similarly, venues are really relevant in other aspects. So for example, your team and your personal development process, you want to know if in the venues you have at the session, do you have the space to hold meetings? Do you have the space to have one activity with your team? These are things you want to think ahead of time and communicate with the organizers, so that when you are there, you can make sure that you have the space and the ability to do the things you planned in your vision. Or you may also think, oh yeah, so in this location, like in the master plan, it says we're going to be in this location at this time, but that doesn't really work with the experience we're going for. So maybe we can adjust the master plan for the media team to then be at a different location. So you may want to just think about these things and the logistics of your vision to go from the cool ideas you have, the concrete execution there is, the master plan, and how those two can work with the people to enact the whole vision at the end.